Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to do a video talking about my pregnancy with Isaiah. I know he's a little older. Usually you do pregnancy and labor videos a lot sooner, like the first month or so. But I wanted to sit down and do this video mostly for myself rather than anybody else, just so that way I can look back and remember some of the details that as time goes on that I'm going to forget. We had talked about wanting kids when we got married, but we knew we wanted to have a house first. So the plan was to be married for a little while and then get a house. Our first year of marriage was in an apartment, and then we started the house buying process and started looking around and searching, and we never ended up finding anything. And we're almost 8 years married now and still haven't found anything. So that kept getting set aside because we wanted, to have somewhere to put the kid. Things didn't go as planned, and as you can see, we've been married, like I said, almost 8 years. By the time 2017 came around, I was to the point where it didn't matter that we didn't have a house. We just needed to start trying to have kids if we were wanting to, because we didn't even know if we were going to be able to conceive or not, because both Jeff and I have health problems that could make it to where we thought we couldn't have kids. So that year we were planning on just starting trying anyways. That fall, or the end of the summer, August, his parents approached us and asked if we would be willing to move in with his grandma to take care of her. She had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and she was actually quite far into it, so she needed somebody at the house to be there for safety. After talking about it, we agreed, so we decided to set our kid plans on hold and to move in with her, because we knew that that would not be a place or a scenario to have a kid in, and we didn't know how long we were going to be there. God obviously had other plans because we weren't trying, and yet we still happened to get pregnant. So that's basically where the story begins. We moved in. We don't use birth control. We use the temperature method. That September, my Lady Comp gave me, the Lady Comp has 3 lights. It has a red, yellow, and a green light, and those lights mean different things. Well, the morning of September 10th, I looked at my computer after I took my temperature, and those 3 colors were flashing at me. And I've been using the computer for a few years now, so I wasn't quite sure, but from what I remember, that was a sign that you were pregnant. So I was like, oh crap. So I got out the manual and checked it, and that was correct. That's what it meant. So I panicked a little bit, went and took a test, and the test was negative. So I relaxed for a little bit, like, okay, the computer might be telling me that, but my body chemicals are telling me otherwise, so I think we're still in the clear. So I relaxed, and I took a couple more tests throughout that week, and they were still negative, so I kind of just put it to the wayside. Next month, I think it was around October 8th, so pretty much almost a whole month, I started getting symptoms. Well, what I didn't know at the time were symptoms, but my chest started hurting. I started getting just really lethargic and sick-like, but not quite sick, so I didn't question it because I worked in the public school system at the time, so getting sick was something I did very often, so I didn't question it too much. But October, I think it was the 12th or 13th or so, I woke up super sick in the middle of the night, and I went in the bathroom and I was vomiting. I'm like, okay, this is not normal. I took another test, and the test was positive. So I had a little freak out moment in the bathroom, and it's 3:30 in the morning at Jeff's grandma's, and now of course my freak out was quiet, but it was still the anxiety, panic inside. I went in and I nudged Jeff awake, and I just handed him the stick, and that was basically it. He turned on the light, looked at it, and it took him a minute to kind of, because he was in a deep sleep or whatever, it took him a minute to kind of figure out, and he didn't really panic or anything. It was more like it wasn't real. So we took a moment, we prayed about it, took some deep breaths, and then we laid down to try and go back to sleep. Of course, I didn't go back to sleep. I don't remember if he did or not, but my mind just started whirling like, oh no, what are we gonna do? Like, we don't have a house, we're living with his grandma. It's obviously not the scenario we wanna be in. But God, obviously did it, because we did not. We were still, using practices to not conceive, so it was not in our planning. It was obviously his timing, so we just, had to work with it. I'm so thankful, honestly, that regardless of our plans, that we ended up having Isaiah, because if we would have been sticking with our plans, it could be another 10 years till we even started trying again, because we still don't have a house. Like, the market's so bad right now. At the time, I did not have health insurance because I was only working part-time. I contacted our local pregnancy center for an ultrasound, so that way I could find out for sure, because I didn't want to go through all the hoops to try and get health insurance if it wasn't even true, because, you know, you can get false positive on the test all the time. So I went and got an ultrasound, and I saw it. I saw our little bean. So it was happening. Like, the reality was sinking in that, like, okay, yes, this is real. We are pregnant. So we went to the pregnancy center, got the ultrasound. They gave us the due date of June 1st. So then at that point, we kind of had an idea of what we were looking at for birth and all that, even though, you know, due dates aren't quite accurate. But I knew I needed to get health insurance, so I started going through that hoop of trying to figure everything out. And because of the way it was working for us for finances and everything else, I ended up actually having to quit my job, quit my permanent position, and go into subbing so that we could get insurance. Because with what I was working, we didn't qualify for insurance, so we were kind of just gonna have to pay it all out of pocket, or my entire paycheck was gonna have to go to insurance. So I ended up quitting my job, and we got insurance, and then I went to our local hospital and started care there, and I scheduled for an ultrasound and got the ultrasound through them, and they actually gave us a different due date. They said May 29th, and because the pregnancy center doesn't actually count as a medical field place, whatever, we had to go by that one. So I knew either way our ballpark was, you know, late May, early June. That's what we were looking at for birth. From then on, the morning sickness really kicked in. I was super sick, which was actually really helpful with the fact that I had quit my job and went on to subbing, was because I was sick so much that instead of having to call in and have somebody cover me, they were basically calling me and saying, hey, are you okay? Do you want to cover today? And I could say yay or nay, and it wouldn't really affect anybody. So in that factor, it was a blessing having to quit my job. On November 30th, we went in for our next ultrasound, which Jeff actually took the day off and was able to go. So we went in for that. Technician asked us if we wanted to find out the sex. And I was thinking, you know, I think we were only 14 weeks at the time. And I was like, this is early, but okay. We said, yeah, we want to know. It's like, well, I can already tell you from this ultrasound, like, there it is. And Jeff had actually already seen it at that point anyways, and he was pretty sure. So on November 30th, we found out we were having a boy. Now, granted, ultrasounds, they can mess, but it was pretty distinct that we were dealing with a boy. We took the blood test at that appointment as well, and found out through a phone call later that the blood said it was a boy as well. So we knew we were having a boy, which was super exciting because we wanted our first kid to be a boy. We would have been happy with a girl, but there was just something that both of us really wanted to have a boy first. So we were really excited about that. Fast forward a little bit into January, I started having some major back pain. So I got a hold of my insurance and got set up to see a chiropractor. And I started going there, and at my first appointment, the chiropractor explained to me why I was having such bad back pain. My relaxin had already set in, and so my joints were already turning to mush, and it was like way early, but it wasn't necessarily anything to be worried about, but it was just like, well, you're gonna be in store for a lot of pain. So from then on, I dealt with some major back pain. I was in the chiropractor every week to try and do some relieving on my joints and things to make it a little more comfortable. January is also when I first started feeling the movements, which was super exciting. And at that point, it was just me being able to feel them. Jeff couldn't feel them yet. I kept, trying to get him, but the baby wasn't moving on the outside enough yet for Jeff to feel it. April 10th, I went in for my appointment. At that point, we were going with a midwife. Initially, when we got pregnant, what I wanted to do was I wanted to do the home birth. I wanted to have a midwife. But seeing as we didn't have a home, you can't just have any midwife come to the hospitals where we're at. What I did was there's actually a medical center here that works with multiple midwives, and I went through them. So the possibility of which midwife you're going to get, you don't know, but you're at least having a midwife rather than a regular doctor. So on April 10th, I went to my appointment and found out that he had turned breech. It wasn't something necessarily to worry about yet because we were still quite far away. We were still almost 2 months away from birth. But they gave me some stretches and some different things that I could do to try and flip him, but they only gave me a couple. So I did my own research and found out a bunch of different things. So I started a routine of stretches and laying certain ways and doing certain things to get him to flip. Mostly, the main thing that I was really focused on doing was having my lower body up and my upper body down so that he could get loosened and hopefully readjust. So I was being very, very disciplined with doing that. Also around that time, because I wanted more help with that, because I wanted to have a natural birth, so I wanted to make sure to get him to flip so I didn't end up with a C-section, we got a doula. And so we met with her, and she showed us even some more things. She also did some rebozo sifting to try and get him to loosen. So we did a lot of that. Now, at the end of April, I started getting some Braxton Hicks, and they were actually pretty regular. They weren't close together or anything like that to be nervous, but it was daily that I was dealing with regular contractions. And that happened until the end, so that was quite fun. Then we went in for another appointment and got the Braxton Hicks assessed, and they were fine. But we also found out in the beginning of May that he had turned correctly. He was in the correct position, ready for birth, facing the right way. Everything was good to go. So everything I'd been doing had worked, and the midwives were actually quite surprised that it had worked, or that he flipped on his own or whatever, but they weren't used to seeing that. So that was very encouraging to know that something I did worked right, I guess you could say. And so from that point on, from the beginning of May, I was just dealing with a lot of back pain. At this point, I still wasn't sick. The sickness, I think, stopped around February, March. So my morning sickness lasted a lot longer than just your first trimester, but it did end, thankfully. But the back pain did not. That just continued. We got to May, and we had the contractions every day. Once it got near the end of May, I think it was like the second week to the end of May, my contractions started getting more intense and more regular, and I was thinking, okay, we're near the due date, things are going to start happening. And nothing ever actually picked up, and I worked up until my original due date. The last day I worked was May 29th, and even that day when I was at work, like, I was having contractions as I'm doing stuff in the classrooms and things, but just it never went anywhere. So that was kind of frustrating. It was like, I feel like I'm in labor, but it's not going anywhere. So dealt with a lot of that. I knew I could still have more time, unfortunately. So once it got June 1st, and it became the original due date that we were given by the pregnancy center, which was the one that we were kind of going off of, we started doing everything we possibly could to naturally induce. Some of the things that we did were, we went on walks. I went on walks by myself every morning. My husband and I walked together every night. I started eating the dates 6 weeks beforehand that you see on the internet that you can do. I was eating 6 dates every day or something like that for 6 weeks to try and help. I was eating pineapple, I was eating spicy food, I was only sitting on a yoga ball and bouncing on a yoga ball. I was also doing that for my back, so that's a little different. I had a raspberry tea concentrate that I was taking, or raspberry that I was drinking, and I was getting acupressure for the different points that were supposed to induce labor. And then the other thing was rebozo sifting with the doula again. So that was supposed to help get things triggered, just like, because maybe the baby was just pinched in the wrong place, so things weren't starting. So we did that, I think, almost once a week, meeting with her near the end there. The other thing I did was the mile circuit. You can find it on the internet, but it's a specific timing of walking curbside and laying a certain way, and I think squats are involved, but I don't quite remember. But you can find it on the internet. I might even link it below if I remember. But I did that very religiously because I was like, I need to get this baby out. I've been done 5 months prior. Like we're at the due date. I've held out as long as I can. I'm done. So we started doing all those. So at that point, we were going into the doctor weekly for our appointments, and they said, well, the baby just must be comfy. Once it hit the due date point, however, they mentioned that we should probably start looking into getting induced, which is something I really didn't want because I know once you get induced, there's a waterfall effect of other things happening. So I really wanted to avoid that as much as I could. I protested and held out. Once it got to about June 10th, I think it was. No, it wasn't quite June. It was June 9th. I gave up. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm huge, I'm hot, I'm just miserable, I just want this baby out. So at that point I called my midwife and scheduled to be induced. So that next day, we got scheduled for the following day to go into the hospital at 7 o'clock to get induced. So on June 11th, which happens to be our anniversary, we went into the hospital to be induced. This is where would stop this video because I wanted to do a part 2 and I want to actually talk about my birth experience in another video. I want to try and keep this one short. At this point, I'm going to stop this video and I'm going to continue in a part 2 on my Laybourne delivery, because that is a whole nother story, and it would make this video really long if I tried to combine them. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop here, and I will try and post that video soon. Thanks, guys.